Creating primitives and composites. In Chapter 2 of the Advanced AutoCAD 3D modeling component, we're going to look at these objectives: constructing 3D solid primitives, using dynamic feedback when creating constructive solid primitives. We're going to use what's called Boolean operations of union, subtract, and interference, and creating regions. And so essentially what we're doing is we're looking at how to create solid models from two-dimensional geometry. So there's different types of 3D models. We have wireframes, we have solid objects, and we have surface models. And I remember when solid modeling came out, it was in the 90s, and it's a much better process than working with wireframes or surface models, because when a model is solid, you can do things like create three-dimensional objects with 3D printers. And it all works off of, these same basic principles. And so talk a little bit about dynamic feedback and dynamic input. And what they're really talking about is the feedback you get from the cursor when you move it around. Now, here's the modeling tab of the Home tab ribbon in the 3D workspace. And so we're going to bring that up and take a look at that. And then we're going to look at the primitives, how primitives are created, things like box, cylinder, cone. I don't so much do the polysolids, but everything else is quite good. And then we're going to go through and we're going to model our parts from the previous lab and make them 3D. So if we switch over to AutoCAD and we bring up our geometry here, here's the first part of the lab. And then what we're going to do is we're going to come over here to this gear here, and we're going to select the arrow next to it and select 3D modeling. And here's the ribbon for 3D modeling. We're going to re-enable the toolbar or the menu bar. So by saying show menu bar, I get a second menu here. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to start off by taking a look at these primitives. And so we have these primitives: box, cylinder, cone, sphere, pyramid, wedge, and torus. And we can create models of these different parts. And so if we were to go through and let's use a color that's kind of interesting. And so we're on the visible layer. What I'll do is I'll create a new layer, and we'll say new, and we'll name it 3D. And we'll give that a color. Let's go with orange. And then we'll make it current. And let's see, let's make sure it's not locked. And let's give it a line weight. 0.6 shows up quite nicely, and it's per our ASME Y14.2. So now we've created a layer. We're going to make it active. And then what we're going to do is we're going to copy this shape over to the side. And so we can go and we can select copy. We can select the shape, hit enter, move it from this point here. And I already did this once. I noticed I have a redundant one, so you have to excuse me for that. We don't need to. So I'm going to get rid of that one. All right, now that we have this shape, now there's different ways to create solid objects. One way is with primitives. And as you create things, if you try to work within the top view of the object, you really can't see what you're doing. And so what I recommend you do is you change to an isometric view. Bring the display back with pan and zoom, and then you can see how these commands will work. And so if I wanted to create a box, I would go through and create the corners of the object, and then I'd bring it up in the Z-axis. And if I wanted to orbit that part, I can hold the shift key and hit the middle mouse wheel, and I can see it in wireframe. And that's because my visual style is set for wireframe. If I change it to conceptual, it looks a little better. You can see that it's solid. So there's a technique that you can create these different primitives. I could create a sphere if I wanted to and put it on the corner here, like that. And then you can do things like Boolean operations, like subtract. And so if we look at the subtract command, we can select the large object, hit enter, and then select the smaller object part to be removed, and it'll actually take a bite out of it. And so as you work with primitives, some of the techniques are in manipulating these primitives with union and subtract to add and subtract material, kind of like working with clay. Another technique is to use press pull. And press pull is a really nice command because what it'll do is it will create a region or a boundary shape of this object. Because if I try to extrude it like that, it'll extrude it line by line and it kind of looks like a net. And if you check the properties on it by clicking on it and then right clicking and going to quick properties, you can see that it's a surface. Now surfaces, we can't do Boolean operations on. So they don't do us much good when we want to do prototyping. So in order to make it into a solid object, what we want to do is we want to region it or poly edit and join it. And so I'm going to go with region. I'm going to select the object. I'm going to hit enter. And now it's created a solid shape. It's like a flat shape of it. And then what I can do is I can extrude it by clicking on it, hitting enter, and then extrude that up 4 units. And then what I can do is I can 3D rotate it to put it in the same orientation that it is in the exercise. And so if I'm looking at the exercise, it's kind of pointing in that direction. And so I rotated it so that it's the same. Okay, that's how to do the first object. I'm going to move this little box here, and I think I'm just going to delete it. And now we're going to do the second object. We'll go back to a top view. Now with this shape right here, it's kind of like a pipe or a tube where we have an inside diameter and an outside diameter. The center lines will cause it to break or give us some difficulty, and I'll show you an example of that. So we're going to start by copying this over to the side, and then we're going to extrude it with press pull, and we're going to go, if we want to measure this with distance, we're going to bring that out 6 inches, 6 units. So we'll copy it with the copy command from here. To here. We'll hit escape. We'll take an isometric view, zoom in and pan. And this time we're going to use press pull. Let's change the color of our, let's just go to properties. I like to use toolbars when I'm in the 3D workspace because I can't always find where all the commands are. And so I like to have layers and properties. And so I'm going to put on the properties toolbar, just kind of a, as a side note, because I will very often go through and change colors. And so let's make this object green. Now, if we press pull this object, the way that this works is that it will create a region. And so if I click within the boundaries, it goes and creates a region within that area, kind of like the hatch command. We're going to need to get rid of the center lines so that it doesn't divide that up like that. And then what we'll do is we'll press pull this 6 units, zoom out, and then we'll take a look at the orientation of it and we'll 3D rotate it. Grab the axis. If you use ortho, it'll keep it in nice 90-degree increments. And so that's the orientation that we want for that. All right, continuing on. We don't need the sketch, so we can delete these 2 circles. The next object looks kind of like an igloo. Take a look at that in the top view. We'll copy it. Going to leave out some of those center lines from this point. to this point here. We'll check how far that is. It looks like 6 with the distance command. 5. Good thing we checked. Come back to our part. Get an isometric view. Let's go with a different color. And this time what we'll do is we'll p-edit. We'll select one of the lines. It'll ask, do you want to turn it into a polyline? We'll say yes. And then we'll say join. And then we'll join it to all these other lines that touch it. Now this one won't be joined. You can shift click to remove it from the selection set. And then we hit enter twice. Now it's a poly. Well, I thought it would be a polyline. Apparently it's not. Let me erase this out. And let's try that again. P-edit. Select one of the lines. Join. Select all of the lines. Hit enter. Now there's an error with it because what it's finding is that 0 segments have been added to it. It's covering up the information for me. So if I zoom in, I may find the error. And I'm wondering if it's on a locked layer or something like that. It's on a visible layer, that's fine. So let's try press pull. Let's just go with that for right now. And so we'll bring that up 5 units, hit enter, and then we'll 3D rotate that. Select the object, hit enter, select the axis of rotation. And then since I have ortho on, I just need to get it so that I have enough space that I can drive the cursor far enough away from it so it doesn't wiggle. And then I can hit escape. I can move the object off of the sketch, erase the sketch geometry, and then we can do our next model. So our next model will be this shape right here. And I'm just going to kind of go through these kind of quickly. We'll get a top view. Zoom in, copy it. Shift click to remove, enter, base point, where I'm going to copy it to. Go down in the second row here. Isometric view. Zoom in, change the color and properties. Press pull is the fastest. And so if we press pull this, 4 units. (3D) rotate. Select the axis. Get a little bit more space. We'll just move it off the part. Off the sketch geometry. And then we'll delete the sketch geometry. Just housekeeping. Next model. Top view. We're going to use this view, and then we're going to extrude that a distance. Six. We'll copy it from this point. Turn off my ortho. Change my color. Isometric view. Before I do, let's just check how many units. Six units. press pull, hover, acquire, bring it up, 6. And then we'll 3D rotate that. Turn on our ortho. Select our axes. Sometimes you have to exaggerate the amount. So you may have to zoom back a little bit. Move it off of our sketch geometry. Erase our sketch. All right, so as we look at these, this one right here is a little bit tricky because it doesn't exactly fit if we tried to create a pyramid from it. And so this part right here is 4 units high by 4 units wide by 5 units. All right, so if we copy this top view, turn off our ortho, grab an isometric view. My first inclination was to make a pyramid on top of it. And so what I thought I could do would be to use the pyramid command and then place the center of the pyramid right there. And then here's the difficulty. It's not, the pyramid command will not place it properly. It creates each side equal length, but there's a way around it. So we'll make this 4 units tall. And then what we'll do is we'll use sub-object editing by holding the shift key and then clicking on the part. Holding the control key and clicking on the part, you'll get a grip for the sub-object, and we'll grab that sub-object edge and we'll pull that. Shift middle mouse wheel, I'm just going to press it and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to hit escape twice to clear the grips, and then I'm going to hold the control key, grab the sub-object and pull it out. Shift middle mouse wheel, move the part. Erase the sketch. So as we create these models, we're going to use these 3-dimensional commands. As we look at other commands, we can use primitives. So we can create the shape with a cone command. 6 units. Column. Select the center of it with an O snap. And then we can go and we can get a quadrant. And then we can bring that up 6 units. And that completes that exercise. This one's a little trickier. This one is not too bad because we'll have to subtract out part of this shape. So we'll copy it over. I'm going to type WP for window polygon. What a window polygon will allow you to do is to create a window in a polygon shape. So other than just a square, we'll move it from a base point and we'll move it over to our destination. And this part's going to be 4 inches thick. So we're going to go and we're going to extrude this object. And so what we'll do is we'll need to turn off this layer right here, the hidden layer. And then we can press, pull, or extrude it. 4 units. We'll switch back to wireframe. We'll turn our layer back on. And to create this shape, what we'll do, let's go with a different color so we can see it, is we're going to create a rectangle. And we're just going to sketch right on this surface here, this rectangle like that. And then what we can do is we can extrude it the proper amount, which is going to be 2 units. And so what we can do is we can extrude it, select it, bring it up 2 units in the Z-axis 2. And then we can 3D move it 1 unit up from this point. Say 1. And then as we look at it, shift middle mouse key, we can see that everything looks good for a subtract command. And so we'll come in here and we'll go with subtract solid. Let's do this in a conceptual so we can see it. We'll say subtract. We'll select the larger shape, hit enter, and then the part to be removed. And sometimes it can be a little glitchy like that. Let's try it again. And so there we've subtracted that component, and now we can 3D rotate it into place. Turn on the ortho, goes quicker. Do it again. About the y-axis. It was correct. All right, let's move that. Get rid of our sketch. Move it back. And then our last part. So with this, it's got a round shape, and then it's kind of like, it looks kind of like to me like a basket if I was to visualize what this would look like in 3D. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this shape right here and copy it. And then I'm going to press pull the bottom shape 2 units. I believe it's 2. Let's take a look. Yeah, 2, 2, and 2. Let's go with magenta. Press pull, hover, acquire. We could go down with this 2 units. And then we will go up 2 units with the other one. Undo that, went the wrong way. Press pull. And it's acquiring the entire, it's not acquiring what I'm trying to get. I'm trying to get right here, this side. There we go. So we'll bring that up 2. And then we can 3D move this. Grab the Z-axis, go up 2 units. And then we can create a circle. I'm just going to draw a circle right on top of that one. So I'm going to hover, I'm going to acquire the center, shift right click, center. And I'm just going to make that to the quadrant. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to extrude that. L for last. Enter, 2 units. And one mistake, I have to rotate it. So I'm going to 3D rotate this top one. I'm going to place this there about the blue axis. Turn off my snap. Turn my ortho on. And I'm just going to spin it around to the same side. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to union them, which will fuse them together, kind of glue them. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to 3D rotate it. To the proper perspective. Okay, so that completes how to model the parts. We can go into the layout and we can double click in the viewport. We can center those within the viewport. We could probably put a little bit of space between some of these, just make the layout look nice. All right, save it, and that completes Lab 2B.